The darkness was absolute. Captain Lee Taman existed somewhere between life and death, suspended in a frozen sleep that had no beginning and no end. His last memory was fire, the hull of the UEDF horizon splitting open like paper, the screaming of alarms, the violent force that threw him into the emergency cryopod. Then, nothing. But now, something was changing. Somewhere in the infinite black, a sound emerged. Soft at first, like whispers in a dream. Then louder. Mechanical hums. The hiss of releasing pressure. Warmth began to creep into his frozen limbs, painful and slow. Taman's eyes remained closed, but his mind was waking. How long had it been? Hours? Days? The pod's timer should have woken him after 72 hours, once it detected a rescue signal. Standard protocol. Someone must have found him. The seal on the cryopod broke with a sharp crack. Cold air rushed in, replaced immediately by something warmer. Taman's lungs burned as they remembered how to breathe. His fingers twitched. His heart, which had beat only once per minute for so long, began to race. "Careful, his vitals are unstable," a voice said. The words were strange, the accent unfamiliar, but somehow Taman understood them. "Step back. Give him space," another voice commanded. This one was softer, gentler. Taman forced his eyes open. The light was blinding. Shapes moved above him, blurry and undefined. He tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. Nothing came out except a rough gasp. "Water," the gentle voice said. "Bring water, quickly." Something touched Taman's lips. Cool liquid flowed into his mouth. He swallowed reflexively, coughing as his body remembered the motion. His vision began to clear, and what he saw made his heart stop. The face looking down at him was not human. Large eyes, too large for any person, stared at him with an expression of desperate hope. The creature's skin shimmered with tiny, translucent feathers that caught the light like glass. A delicate beak-like mouth opened and closed as it breathed. The being wore something that resembled a medical uniform, but the proportions were all wrong. Taman tried to push himself up, panic flooding his system. His arms were too weak. He collapsed back onto the examination table. "Please, do not be afraid," the creature said, raising thin, three-fingered hands in a calming gesture. "You are safe. We found you. We saved you." "What?" Taman's voice cracked. "What are you?" The creature's eyes grew even wider, filling with what looked like tears. "I am Fira. I am Valrine. And you are human. The first human we have seen in 800 years. The words made no sense. 800 years? Impossible. The cryopod was designed for short-term emergency suspension, not centuries. There had to be a mistake. "No," Taman managed to say. "That's wrong. The timer. It was only supposed to be." "Your pod was damaged," another voice said. A different Valrine stepped into view, this one taller and wearing what looked like a science officer's uniform. "The timer failed. The distress beacon failed. You have been drifting in space for 1,043 years. The world seemed to tilt. 1,000 years. Everyone he knew was dead. His family, his friends, his entire civilization. Gone, while he slept. "Where is my ship?" Taman asked, though he already knew the answer. "Where is the horizon? Where is my crew?" Fira exchanged a look with the other Valrine. "There is no ship. Only your pod. We found you near the outer belt, drifting among the asteroids." Taman closed his eyes. They were gone. All of them. He was alone. "I am sorry," Fira said softly. "But there is more you must know. It is not just your crew. Humanity, all of humanity, is gone." His eyes snapped open. "What are you talking about?" The taller Valrine, who introduced herself as Thela, began to explain. Her words came slowly, carefully, as if she were afraid they might break him. 800 years ago, humanity had been at war with something called the Draken Swarm, a mechanical species that consumed everything in its path. The galaxy was losing. Billions were dying. Then humanity did something desperate. They activated a weapon, something so powerful it destroyed the swarm completely. But there was a price. After the weapon activated, humans began to disappear, Thela said. Not all at once. Over the course of several months, every human in the galaxy simply vanished. From Earth, from the colonies, from ships and stations. No bodies, no signs of struggle, just empty rooms and silent cities. We don't know where they went, Fira added. We have searched for centuries. Some believe they ascended to another plane of existence. Others think the weapon transported them somewhere else. But no one knows the truth. Taemin's mind reeled. This had to be a dream, a nightmare brought on by cryosleep. But the pain in his muscles was too real. The confusion on the aliens' faces was too genuine. Why didn't I disappear? He asked. You were already in cryosleep when it happened, Thela explained. Frozen. Drifting in the void. Perhaps the process did not affect you because you were in stasis. Or perhaps... She hesitated. Perhaps you were meant to survive. Meant to survive. The words felt like a weight settling on Taemin's chest. Meant to survive? For what? Over the next several hours, as Taemin's strength slowly returned, the Valrine told him everything. They showed him records of Earth, now a monument world, covered in vegetation, preserved as a sacred site. They showed him images of other species, dozens of them, all living in a vast alliance across the galaxy. They showed him statues of human soldiers, museums dedicated to human culture, libraries preserving human language and history. Humanity had saved the galaxy and then vanished, leaving behind legends and grief. We have kept your language alive, Fira said with pride. We study your tactics, your philosophy, your art. Humans are remembered as the great ones, the saviors. But Taemin did not feel like a savior. He felt like a ghost. The Valrine brought him to a window. Outside, their ship hung in space near a massive space station. Ships of all shapes and sizes moved in organized patterns, coming and going. Taemin had never seen such diversity. Each vessel was unique, clearly built by different hands, different minds. This is Sanctum Station, Thela said. The center of the Allied territories. 53 species live and work together here, maintaining the peace that humanity died to create. Taemin watched the ships in silence. Somewhere in his mind, he knew he should feel wonder. But all he felt was hollow. Why did you bring me here? He finally asked. Fira stepped closer to the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. Because we need you. Oh, I'm just one soldier, one man. What could I possibly do? More than you know, Thela said. A new threat has emerged. The Vorn hierarchy. They are conquering our worlds, enslaving our people. We have tried to resist, but we are losing. We need what only humanity possessed. The ability to fight against impossible odds. The courage to stand when all hope is lost. Taemin turned to look at the two Valrine. They were trembling, he realized. Not from cold, but from fear. And something else. Hope. Please, Fira whispered, her large eyes shining with tears. Please, don't leave us. You are the last human. The last piece of those who saved us. If you disappear too, all hope disappears with you. In that moment, Taemin understood why he had survived. Not by chance, not by luck, but because someone, somewhere, had known that the galaxy would need humanity again. And if humanity could not be here, then one human would have to be enough. He was tired. He was alone. He was lost, in a time not his own. But he was still a soldier. Tell me about the Vorn, Taemin said. Tell me everything. Fira's face transformed with relief and joy. Thela bowed her head in gratitude, and the last human prepared for war. Sanctum Station was massive beyond anything Taman had imagined. His first steps into the main concourse left him speechless. The corridor stretched for what seemed like miles, with ceilings so high they disappeared into artificial clouds. Beings of every imaginable shape and size moved through the space, going about their daily lives. A group of insectoid creatures skittered past on 6 legs, their chitinous shells gleaming under the station lights. Behind them, something that looked like living water flowed through a transparent tube built into the floor. Above, crystalline beings that caught and reflected light, like living diamonds, floated on some kind of anti-gravity field. But what struck Taman most was how they looked at him. Every being that noticed him stopped. Conversations halted mid-sentence. A young chitterling child pointed with one of its multiple arms, its compound eyes wide with wonder. An elderly deepborn in the water tube pressed against the transparent wall to get a closer look. The luminae above dimmed their light in what Fira explained was a sign of deep respect. "They know what I am," Taman said quietly. Words spread quickly. Fira replied, walking beside him. "The first human in 8 centuries. It is the most significant event in most of their lifetimes." They passed a large plaza where a statue stood at the center. Taman stopped, his breath catching in his throat. The statue depicted a human soldier in combat armor, holding a rifle in one hand and reaching down with the other to help a fallen Valrine to its feet. The plaque at the base read in multiple languages. "They stood for those who could not stand. They fought for those who could not fight. We will remember." Taman had to look away. Fira guided him through the station to the council chambers, a massive spherical room with platforms arranged in a circle. Representatives from dozens of species were already gathered, waiting. As Taman entered, every single being stood. The gesture was unmistakable, even across species. It was respect, honor, reverence. The council speaker, an ancient luminae named Varix, whose crystalline body pulsed with soft blue light, floated to the center. When it spoke, its voice resonated like singing crystal. "Captain Lee Taman of humanity," Varix said, "on behalf of all free species of the galaxy, we welcome you. We honor you, and we ask for your help." A holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber. It showed a section of the galaxy highlighted in red, the color spreading like an infection across multiple systems. "The Vorn hierarchy," Varix explained. 50 years ago, they were a minor species on the galactic fringe. Then they discovered ancient technology and reverse-engineered it. Within a generation, they became a military power. Within 2 generations, they became conquerors. The display zoomed in, showing planets under Vorn control. Cities in ruins. Populations in chains. Fleets of massive warships bearing down on helpless worlds. "They are not like the Draken swarm," Varix continued. "The swarm was mindless consumption. The Vorn are deliberate, organized. They believe they are superior to all other species and have a right to rule. They take what they want and destroy anyone who resists." A Valrine officer stepped forward from one of the platforms. She was taller than Fira and Thela, with feathers that gleamed like polished silver. Her uniform bore marks of high rank. "I am Commander Kim Nari," she said, her voice strong and clear. "I lead the Allied Defense Force. For 20 years, I have studied human military history. Every battle, every strategy, every tactic. I have dedicated my life to understanding how humans fought." She looked directly at Taman. "And in all my years of study, I have learned one crucial truth. Humans did not win because they were stronger. They won because they thought differently. They adapted. They improvised. They refused to accept defeat, even when defeat seemed certain." Nari activated another display, showing battle after battle. All defeats. Allied fleets shattered. Defensive lines broken. Colonies evacuated mere hours before Vorn occupation. "We cannot think the way you do," Nari said, and for the first time Taman heard something break in her voice. Not weakness, but honest desperation. Taman looked around the chamber at all the faces watching him. Fear and hope mixed in equal measure. These beings had kept humanity's memory alive for 800 years. They had preserved his culture, his language, his history. And now they were asking him to be what they remembered. "I need to understand something first," Taman said. "Show me the human records. Everything that remains. I need to know what happened to my people." "Mon." Varix's light pulsed in acknowledgement. "Of course. Nari will escort you to the Remembrance Vault." The Remembrance Vault was located in the oldest section of Sanctum Station. Nari led Taman through corridors that felt more like a temple than a military installation. The walls were covered in human writing, quotes from history, poetry, song lyrics, all carefully preserved. "We built this place 100 years after humans disappeared," Nari explained. "A repository for everything human. We were afraid we might forget. Afraid that without humans to teach us, we might lose what made them special." The vault door was massive, made of some dark metal inscribed with the names of thousands of humans. Heroes from the war against the swarm. Taman saw names he recognized from history classes, people who had been legends even in his time. Inside, the vault was vast. Rows upon rows of data cores, artifacts, and holographic displays. Nari led him to a central platform where a single terminal waited. "This is the final archive," she said softly. "Messages left by the last humans before they disappeared. We have preserved them exactly as they were recorded." Taman sat at the terminal with trembling hands. He accessed the files, sorting by date. The last entries were from nearly 800 years ago. He searched for familiar names, hoping against hope that he might find someone he knew. And then he saw it. Lee Dongwu. His family name. The video file opened. A man appeared on the screen, wearing an admiral's uniform. He looked like Taman's father. Same eyes, same jaw, but older, bearing the weight of command. "If you are watching this, then you are either human or someone who cares about what we were," Admiral Lee Dongwu said. "I am recording this as one of the last humans in this dimension. The weapon we used against the swarm worked, but it had an unexpected effect. The radiation it released is incompatible with human biology. We are being pulled into a dimensional fold." One by one, the Admiral paused, collecting himself. "We tried to stop it. We tried to reverse it. But the process is irreversible. Within weeks, there will be no humans left in this reality. We are being transported somewhere else. Somewhere the radiation cannot reach. We built the fold device, hoping it would be temporary. Hoping we could return once the radiation dispersed." Tears streamed down the Admiral's face now. "But we made a mistake. The fold is one way. We cannot return. We are trapped in a space between dimensions. Alive, but unreachable. If you are human, and you somehow avoided the fold, know this. We did not abandon you. We did not abandon the galaxy. We were taken, and we are sorry." The message continued. "We left everything behind hoping it would be preserved. Our knowledge, our culture, our values. If the species we saved remember us, if they carry forward what we taught them, then we are not truly gone. And if any human survived and sees this message, know that you carry humanity's legacy now. You are our voice, our hands, our hope. Do not let us be forgotten." The Admiral saluted the camera. "I am Admiral Lee Dongwu, 6th generation descendant of Captain Lee Taman of the UEDF Horizon. If my ancestor somehow survived, if he is watching this, know that your family line continued. We honored your service. And we never stopped hoping you would come home. The message ended. Taman sat in silence, tears running down his face. His descendant, his family, had continued. They had lived, and fought, and sacrificed themselves to save the galaxy. And now he was all that remained of that bloodline. Nari stood quietly behind him, giving him space to grieve. Finally, Taman spoke. They did not leave by choice. No, Nari agreed. They were taken from us, and you have been fighting alone ever since. We have tried to be worthy of their sacrifice. Taman stood, wiping his face. He looked at Nari, this alien warrior, who had spent her entire life studying his species, trying to understand what made them special. Then let me teach you, he said. Not just tactics and strategies, but how humans think. How we approach impossible problems. How we turn fear into fuel and desperation into determination. Nari's feathers ruffled with emotion. You will help us? My people saved this galaxy once, Taman said. I will not let their sacrifice be wasted. If the Vorn want war, then we will give them something they have never faced before. We will give them humanity. For the first time since waking, Taman felt purpose settle over him like armor. He was alone. Yes, the last of his kind. But he was not powerless. He carried within him 1,000 years of human experience, strategy, and stubborn refusal to quit. The Vorn hierarchy was about to learn a lesson that the galaxy had learned long ago. Never underestimate humanity. And now, never underestimate the last human. The training facility on Sanctum Station had been built according to human specifications from old records. Taman stood in the center of what would have been called a combat simulation room in his time, watching as his new students filed in. They were the strangest military unit he had ever seen. Jiro, a chitterling scout, moved on 6 legs with disturbing speed. His compound eyes could see in multiple spectrums simultaneously. Vena, a Luminae engineer, floated above the ground, her crystalline body pulsing with calculated light patterns as she processed information. KL, a deep-born pilot, stood in his environment suit, filled with water, his tentacles moving in slow, graceful patterns. And Nari, the Valrine commander who had become his second in command, watched him with intense focus, ready to absorb every lesson. The first thing you need to understand, Taman began, is that you have been fighting the wrong kind of war. You have been trying to match the Vorn strength for strength, fleet for fleet, soldier for soldier. That is exactly what they want. But how else can we fight? Vena asked, her voice like wind chimes. They have superior numbers and technology. Then we do not fight them the way they expect, Taman said. He activated the holographic display, showing a recent battle. An allied fleet had engaged a Vorn force in open space. The result was predictable. The Vorn had overwhelmed them with superior firepower. This battle was lost before it began, Taman continued. You accepted their terms. You met them in open space, where their advantages meant everything. Humans learned long ago that you never fight on the enemy's terms. You create your own terms. He changed the display, showing terrain maps of various worlds. The Vorn are conquerors. They want territory. That means they have to come to the planets to take them. That is where we make them bleed. Over the next weeks, Taman taught them concepts that had never occurred to the Allied forces. Guerrilla warfare, ambush tactics, psychological operations, the idea that losing a battle could be part of winning a war. The Vorn think in straight lines, Taman explained during one session. Their military doctrine is based on overwhelming force and direct confrontation. They have never faced an enemy that refuses to fight that way. Nari absorbed everything like a student who had finally found the right teacher. She began to see patterns in human tactics that all pointed to one core principle: adaptability. Humans had never been the strongest or the fastest. They had survived by being flexible, unpredictable, and stubborn. Teach me about persistence, Nari said one evening as they reviewed battle plans. In every human battle I have studied, even when losing, humans continued fighting. Why? Taman thought about it. Because giving up was never an option, not in our nature. We had a saying, "It is not over until it is over." Even when the situation looked hopeless, there was always a chance. Always one more move to make. That is what we have lost, Nari said quietly. When we see we are losing, we retreat to save lives. It is logical, practical, sometimes, Taman agreed. But sometimes, the logical choice is to stand and fight, even when the odds are against you. Because the enemy expects you to run, because your stand might buy time for others. Because someone has to draw a line and say, no further. The opportunity to test these new tactics came sooner than expected. A Vorn fleet attacked a chitterling colony on the world of Kairos 4. The planet was lightly defended, its orbital stations no match for the incoming warships. Standard procedure would be to evacuate and seed the planet. No, Taman said when the report came in. We hold. The council was skeptical. We cannot win a direct engagement, Varix argued. The Vorn have 12 warships. We have 3 in range. Then we do not engage them in space, Taman said. We let them land. The decision shocked everyone. Allowing an enemy ground force to land was considered tactical suicide. But Taman had a plan. He sent Nari ahead with the rapid response team. Their orders were simple. Evacuate civilians to hardened shelters. Then, prepare the battlefield. When the Vorn fleet arrived at Kairos 4, they found the orbital stations abandoned and the planet's defenses silent. Suspicious but confident, they deployed their ground forces. 10,000 Vorn soldiers, massive reptilian warriors bred for war, descended to the planet's surface. They expected resistance at the cities. Instead, they found them empty. Where are they? Vorn Commander Krell demanded as his troops secured the ghost town. Where are the defenders? The answer came when night fell. Taman had positioned allied forces throughout the surrounding forest. Small teams, mixed species, each using their unique abilities. The chitterlings moved through the darkness, like living shadows. The Luminae used their light to create illusions and distractions. The Deepborn used the planet's water systems to attack from unexpected angles, and Nari coordinated it all, using human tactics she had learned from ancient battles on Earth. The Vorn, accustomed to straightforward combat, found themselves fighting ghosts. They would establish a position only to be hit from 3 directions at once. They would pursue an enemy only to walk into traps. Their communications were jammed by Luminae interference. Their supply lines were cut by chitterling infiltrators. For the first time in decades, the Vorn were not winning. They were bleeding. Taman watched the battle unfold from the command center, feeding suggestions to Nari, letting her make the tactical decisions. She was learning, adapting, thinking like a human. On the 3rd day, Vorn Commander Krell made a mistake born of frustration. He divided his forces to hunt down the resistance fighters. Taman had been waiting for exactly that. Now, he told Nari. The Allied forces emerged from hiding all at once, striking the divided Vorn units with coordinated attacks. The Vorn found themselves outnumbered at every engagement point, their superior individual strength meaningless against enemies that refused to fight fair. Krell tried to regroup, to pull his forces back to a defensible position. But Taman had anticipated that too. The retreat routes were mined, trapped, made impassable. The Vorn soldiers found themselves being herded like animals, pushed into kill zones where Allied forces waited. By the 5th day, Krell requested evacuation. His proud force of 10,000 was reduced to less than 6,000 combat-effective soldiers. He had taken a planet with no strategic value and lost nearly half his force doing it. More importantly, he had lost something the Vorn had not experienced in 50 years. Confidence. News of the victory at Kairos 4 spread through the Allied territories like wildfire. For the first time, species that had been ready to surrender saw hope. The Vorn could be beaten. The human had shown them how. But the victory also attracted attention from someone Taman had not yet met. Vorn High Commander Gravik watched the battle reports from his flagship with intense focus. A human. After 800 years, a human had returned, and he was teaching the inferior species how to fight. Gravik was old enough to remember the stories passed down through Vorn history. 1,000 years ago, before the Vorn had become a galactic power, they had encountered humans in a border skirmish. It had been a minor engagement, barely worth recording, except that the humans had won. It was the only defeat in Vorn history that their ancestors had acknowledged. The humans had fought differently, unpredictably. They had turned the Vorn's own strength against them, and then they had vanished from the galaxy, leaving only legends. Now one had returned. Find him, Gravik ordered his intelligence officers. I want to know everything about this human. Where he came from, how he survived, what he knows. Sir, should we increase our forces in the contested regions? One of his subordinates asked. No, Gravik said, a cold smile forming. Send the Second Fleet to hunt for this human. I want him captured alive. I want to see if humans are truly as formidable as the ancient records claim, or if they were simply fortunate. Gravik's obsession was born. Not just to win the war, but to defeat the human personally. To prove that the Vorn were superior to the legendary species that had haunted their history. Back on Sanctum Station, Taman stood before the council, receiving congratulations. But his mind was elsewhere. Kiris 4 had been a test, a proof of concept. The real war was just beginning. Nari stood beside him, her silver feathers gleaming with pride. We won because of you, she said. No, Taman corrected. You won because you learned. Because you adapted. That is the real lesson. I am just one man. I cannot be everywhere. But if I can teach enough of you to think the way humans think, then I do not need to be everywhere. You can win without me. Still, Nari said quietly, I am grateful you are here. We all are. Taman looked at her, this alien warrior who had dedicated her life to understanding his species. He thought about his crew, lost 1,000 years ago. His family, trapped in another dimension. He was alone in this time. But maybe, he thought, he was not as alone as he believed. The captured Vorn data core sat on the analysis table like a dark secret waiting to be revealed. Taman watched as Vena worked her crystalline fingers through the holographic interface, decrypting the files taken during their raid on the Vorn supply depot. There is something here, Vena said, her voice uncertain. Multiple references to something called Project Echo. It appears to be their highest priority. What is it? Nari asked, standing beside Taman. Vena pulled up file after file. Excavation reports, energy readings, coordinates. All pointing to former human territories. Areas that had been abandoned for 8 centuries. They are searching for something in the old human colonies, Vena explained. Specifically, they are looking for dimensional fold technology. Taman felt ice spread through his chest. Show me the locations. The holographic display shifted, marking dozens of worlds across the galaxy. All former human settlements, all currently under Vorn occupation or investigation. But one location appeared more frequently than any other. Earth. They have established a major research facility on your homeworld, Vena said softly. In the ruins of what their records call Soul. They believe the dimensional fold generator is still there. Taman stared at the coordinates, his mind racing. If the Vorn found the fold technology and figured out how to weaponize it, they could become unstoppable. They could trap entire fleets in dimensional space. Or worse, they could tear holes in reality itself. We need to destroy that facility, Taman said. Earth is deep in Vorn territory, Nari objected. It would require a stealth mission through multiple checkpoints. The risk is extreme. Then we make it a stealth mission, Taman said. Small team. Fast ship, We get in, destroy the research, and get out before they know we were there. The council approved the mission reluctantly. Varix warned that if they failed, if Taman was captured or killed, the Allied forces would lose their greatest advantage. But Taman was adamant. This was not just about tactics or strategy. This was about protecting his people's legacy, even if they were gone. Nari assembled the team personally. Jiro for infiltration, Vena for technical expertise, Kale for piloting. They took an old human stealth corvette that had been recovered from a museum and restored to working condition. The ship was called the Whisper, and it was designed for exactly this kind of mission. Silent running, minimal energy signature, able to slip past sensors like a ghost. The journey to Earth took 2 weeks through Vorn space. They moved slowly, carefully, using asteroid fields and nebulae for cover. Twice they had to hide while Vorn patrols passed nearby, everyone on the ship holding their breath. When Earth finally appeared on their screens, Taman could not breathe. His homeworld hung in space. Blue and green and beautiful. But something was wrong. The cities that should have blazed with light were dark. The orbital stations were ruins. And across the equator, a massive Vorn facility sprawled like a scar. There, Vena said, pointing to the structure. That is where they are conducting the research. Kael brought the Whisper down through Earth's atmosphere, using the planet's magnetic field to mask their approach. They landed in what had once been a park on the outskirts of Old Sol, the ship hidden among overgrown trees. Taman stepped out onto Earth for the first time in 1,000 years. The air smelled different. Cleaner. Somehow. Nature had reclaimed everything. Buildings were covered in vines. Streets had broken apart, replaced by grass and small trees. Animals moved through the ruins, descendants of species that had survived humanity's disappearance. It is beautiful, Nari said quietly, standing beside him. It was not supposed to be empty, Taman replied. They moved through the ruins toward the Vorn facility. Jiro scouted ahead, his multiple eyes detecting patrol patterns and security measures. The Vorn had been thorough, building their research complex directly over what had been humanity's last space elevator. The structure that once connected Earth to orbit. The dimensional fold generator is in the lower levels, Vena said, scanning with her equipment. But there is a problem. They have already activated it partially. I am reading dimensional instabilities. How long until they fully activate it? Taman asked. Unknown. But based on these readings, they are close to understanding the technology. Days, perhaps. Maybe less. They infiltrated the facility at nightfall. Jiro disabled the outer sensors while Vena created a looping feed for the security cameras. The team moved through corridors filled with Vorn researchers and guards, staying in the shadows, using every trick Taman had taught them. In the central research chamber, Taman saw the dimensional fold generator for the first time. It was massive, a sphere of crystalline technology that pulsed with energy that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Around it, Vorn scientists worked frantically, taking measurements and running tests. We need to destroy it, Taman whispered to the team. If we set off an overload, it will tear itself apart, and possibly take half the city with it, Vena warned. Better than letting the Vorn have it. But before they could act, alarms blared throughout the facility. They had been discovered. Move! Nari shouted. The team ran toward the generator while Vorn soldiers poured into the chamber. Jiro stayed back, using his incredible speed to create a defensive barrier. Kale provided covering fire with a human-designed weapon. Vena and Taman reached the control panel. I need 3 minutes to initiate the overload, Vena said, her fingers flying across the interface. You have 2, Taman replied, returning fire at the advancing Vorn. Then a massive figure entered the chamber, and all the Vorn soldiers stopped advancing. The being was enormous, even for a Vorn. Covered in battle scars and wearing armor decorated with rank insignia, he commanded immediate respect. You must be the human, the figure said, his voice deep and resonant. I am High Commander Gravik. I have been looking forward to meeting you. Taman kept his weapon trained on the commander. The feeling is not mutual. Gravik laughed, a sound like grinding stones. Direct. Efficient. Yes. Very human. I have studied your species extensively. Did you know my ancestors fought humans once? 1,000 years ago? It was our only recorded defeat. Ever since, I have wondered if humans were truly as formidable as the records claimed, or if my ancestors simply had bad luck. You are about to find out, Taman said. Indeed, Gravik agreed. But not today. You see, I anticipated you might attempt something like this. My fleet is in orbit, and reinforcements are arriving as we speak. You can destroy the generator, but you will not escape. So I offer you a choice. Surrender now, and your companions live. Continue this futile resistance, and you all die here. Taman glanced at Vena. She held up one finger. 1 minute. I have a better idea, Taman said to Gravik. How about you get out of my way, and I do not add you to the list of people who underestimated humanity? Gravik's eyes narrowed. Then he smiled. Magnificent. This is what I wanted to see. Not surrender, but defiance in the face of certain defeat. Very well, human. Let us see if you can live up to your legend. He gave a signal, and the Vorn soldiers opened fire. Everything became chaos. Nari pulled Taman behind cover while energy blasts tore through the chamber. Jiro moved like lightning, taking down Vorn soldiers with precise strikes. Kale's weapon fire forced the Vorn to take defensive positions, and Vena worked, her crystalline hands steady despite the battle raging around her. Done, she finally shouted. The overload is initiated. We have 4 minutes before cascade failure. Everyone to the ship, Taman ordered. They fought their way out of the facility, leaving behind a generator that was beginning to pulse with unstable energy. Gravik pursued them personally, his massive form surprisingly fast. He caught up to Taman in the ruins outside, grabbing him with one clawed hand. You will not escape, Gravik snarled. Taman looked the Vorn commander in the eyes. I do not need to escape. I just need to last long enough. Behind them, the facility began to collapse as the dimensional fold generator reached critical mass. Reality itself started to tear, pulling everything toward the imploding generator. Gravik realized his mistake too late. He released Taman and ran for his own ship. But the dimensional pull was too strong. His flagship, hovering above the facility, was caught in the cascade. It twisted, bent, and then vanished into the dimensional tier. The Whisper lifted off just as the implosion reached its peak. Kale pushed the engines to maximum, fighting against the gravitational pull. For a moment, it seemed they would not make it. Then, with a final burst of speed, they broke free of Earth's atmosphere. Behind them, a massive section of Old Sol collapsed into a dimensional void that sealed itself moments later. The Vorn research facility, the generator, and Gravik's flagship were gone. Is he dead? Nari asked, watching the readings. I do not know, Taman said. But even if he survived, it will take him a long time to recover from that. As they set course back to Allied space, Taman took one last look at Earth. He had destroyed part of his homeworld to save it. The irony was not lost on him. You did what was necessary, Nari said, understanding his expression. I know, Taman replied. The mission had been a success. The Vorn's research was destroyed, but Taman knew it was not over. Gravik had survived. Taman could feel it, and the Vorn commander would be coming for him. The real war was about to begin. The destruction of Gravik's flagship and the Vorn research facility sent shockwaves through the galaxy. For the first time in 50 years, the Vorn hierarchy had suffered a major defeat, not in battle, but through strategy, deception, and one human's refusal to accept the impossible. Allied territories erupted in celebration. Species that had been preparing surrender documents began preparing for war. Recruitment stations were flooded with volunteers. Everyone wanted to fight alongside the human, to be part of the force that would finally push back the Vorn. But Taman did not celebrate. He stood in the command center on Sanctum Station, watching tactical displays that showed Vorn forces regrouping. Gravik had survived the dimensional collapse, recovered from his injuries in secret, and was now consolidating his fleets for a massive counteroffensive. "He is coming for us," Taman said to Nari. "For me, specifically." "Let him come," Nari replied. "We will be ready." The Galactic Council convened in emergency session. Varix's crystalline form pulsed with urgent light as he addressed the assembly. "The Vorn are mobilizing every available warship," the Lumine speaker announced. "Our intelligence suggests they are preparing for a final assault on Sanctum Station. They mean to break our alliance by destroying its heart." Murmurs of fear rippled through the chamber. Sanctum Station was not just a military installation. It was a symbol. If it fell, the Allied territories would fragment into individual species, each fighting alone. Exactly what the Vorn wanted. "Then we do not let them take it," Taman said, standing from his seat. All eyes turned to him. "We have spent months on the defensive, reacting to Vorn movements. It is time to change that. It is time to take the fight to them. A direct assault on Vorn territory would be suicide." A Deepborn counselor objected. "Not an assault," Taman corrected. "A campaign. Coordinated, multi-front, using every advantage we have. The Vorn expect us to defend, so we attack." Over the next week, Taman worked with Nari and the Allied command staff to develop a strategy that would have seemed insane to traditional military thinking. Instead of massing their forces for defense, they would split into specialized task forces and strike Vorn supply lines, communications hubs, and isolated fleets. "We make them defend everything," Taman explained to the assembled commanders. "We force them to spread their forces thin, and when they commit to one front, we hit them on another." The chitterlings would use their infiltration skills to sabotage Vorn installations. The Deepborn would conduct raids with their superior void combat capabilities. The Lumine would wage electronic warfare, jamming communications and spreading false intelligence. And the Valrine would coordinate it all, using Nari's understanding of human tactics to turn chaos into strategy. It was guerrilla warfare on a galactic scale. The campaign began with simultaneous strikes across 17 systems. Vorn commanders, accustomed to facing enemies that fought conventionally, found themselves unable to predict where the next attack would come from. Their response was predictable. They called for Gravik. The High Commander emerged from his recovery changed. Half his body was covered in cybernetic replacements from the dimensional collapse. His face bore scars that would never heal, but his eyes burned with singular focus. "The human thinks he can defeat us with tricks and deception," Gravik told his assembled fleet commanders. "He is wrong. We are Vorn. We are superior, and I will prove it by destroying him personally." Gravik's obsession had grown beyond military strategy. It had become personal. He began making decisions based not on tactical superiority, but on his desire to face Taman in combat. And in doing so, he made mistakes. The Allied forces exploited every one of them. A Vorn fleet diverted to pursue a false report of Taman's location, leaving a strategic system vulnerable. The Deepborn struck, crippling the orbital defenses and allowing a full evacuation of enslaved populations. Gravik committed his reserve forces to trap what he believed was Taman's flagship, only to discover it was a decoy crewed by Lumine projecting false energy signatures. Meanwhile, the real assault occurred 3 systems away. "He is losing control," Nari observed, watching the tactical reports. "His hatred of you is making him irrational." "Good," Taman said. "An angry enemy makes mistakes. We need him to make one more." The opportunity came when Gravik issued a challenge that broadcast across the entire galaxy. He would meet the Allied fleet in direct battle at the Vorn throne world. Winner takes all. If the Allies won, the Vorn would sue for peace. If the Vorn won, the Allies would surrender. It is a trap, Varix warned. He will have every advantage on his home territory. Of course it is a trap, Taman agreed. But it is also an opportunity. The entire Vorn fleet, in one location. Every major commander. Every strategic asset. If we win, we do not just defeat them. We end them as a military power. The council voted. The decision was unanimous. They would accept Gravik's challenge. The Allied fleet assembled at the border of Vorn space. It was the largest gathering of military forces the galaxy had seen since the war against the Draken swarm. Hundreds of ships, from dozens of species, all united under one purpose. Taman stood on the bridge of the flagship Remembrance, named in honor of humanity's sacrifice. Nari commanded beside him, her silver feathers gleaming in the bridge lights. "Are you afraid?" she asked quietly. "Terrified," Taman admitted. "But fear has never stopped humans before. It will not stop me now." The fleet entered Vorn space and found Gravik waiting. His armada dwarfed the Allied forces. Massive warships arranged in traditional Vorn battle formation. Overwhelming firepower, designed to crush any opposition through sheer force. "He still does not understand," Taman said, studying the Vorn formation. "He thinks this is about strength." "What is it about?" Nari asked. "Adaptation." Taman gave the order, and the Allied fleet scattered. Instead of meeting the Vorn in a traditional engagement, they broke into small groups, each exploiting the unique capabilities of their species. The formation was called the Taiguk, named after an ancient human symbol of balance and transformation. The Vorn fired on the dispersed targets, but their weapons were designed for large formations, not mobile strike groups. The Allied forces wove through the Vorn fleet like water, striking at weak points, disrupting formations, creating chaos. Gravik watched in fury as his superior numbers became a disadvantage. His ships were too large to maneuver effectively, too many to coordinate against fast-moving targets. Every advantage he thought he had turned into a liability. "Enough," Gravik roared. He took personal command of his flagship and charged directly at the Remembrance. "Face me, human. No more tricks. No more running." Taman could have avoided the engagement. But he understood something crucial. This was not just about military victory. It was about breaking the Vorn psychologically. And for that, Gravik needed to be defeated personally. "Bring us about," Taman ordered. "Let him come." The two flagships met in the center of the battlefield. Weapons fire exchanged at point-blank range. The Remembrance shuddered under the impact, but Taman had chosen his ship well. It was built using old human defensive technology, designed to absorb and redirect energy. "He is trying to board us," Nari reported. "Vorn soldiers are breaching our hull." "Let them," Taman said. "I will meet them." He left the bridge, grabbing a weapon from the armory. In the corridors of the ship, Vorn soldiers were cutting through bulkheads. They were massive, powerful, bred for war. But Taman had something they did not. Experience. He moved through the ship like a ghost, using the environment against the invaders. Tight corridors neutralized their size advantage. Bulkhead doors became traps. Maintenance shafts became ambush points. One by one, the Vorn boarding party fell, until only Gravik remained. They met in the ship's central corridor. The Vorn High Commander towered over Taman, his cybernetic enhancements making him more machine than organic. His weapon was massive, designed to tear through armor. "Finally," Gravik said. "No tricks, no tactics, just warrior against warrior." "If that is what you think this is," Taman replied, "then you have already lost." They fought. Gravik was stronger, his blows powerful enough to dent the ship's walls. But Taman was faster, more adaptable. He used Gravik's momentum against him, turned the corridor's tight space into an advantage, made every attack count. The fight lasted minutes but felt like hours. Finally, Taman found an opening. He drove his weapon through a gap in Gravik's cybernetic armor, right where organic tissue met machine. The Vorn commander fell to his knees. "Kill me," Gravik demanded. Finish it. Prove that humans are superior. Taman looked down at the defeated commander. He thought about all the lives lost, all the suffering the Vorn had caused. He had every right to end this. Instead, he lowered his weapon. No, Taman said. Humans did not survive because we were superior. We survived because we learned, because we adapted, because we understood that strength alone is meaningless. You can learn too. Or, you can die clinging to your pride. Your choice. Gravik stared at him, unable to comprehend. Mercy was not part of Vorn culture. It was weakness. But in that moment, something changed in the commander's eyes. Understanding. Respect. I yield, Gravik said, the words foreign on his tongue. The Vorn hierarchy yields. The battle ended. The Vorn fleet stood down. And for the first time in 50 years, the galaxy knew peace. In the aftermath, Taman addressed the Galactic Council. He spoke about the need for reconciliation, for teaching the Vorn what humanity had taught others. That cooperation was stronger than conquest. That diversity was an advantage, not a weakness. I am one human, Taman said. But I carry the legacy of billions. Everything they taught me, everything they believed in, I pass to you now. Not as orders, but as lessons. Learn them. Teach them. Live them. That is how humanity survives, even though they are gone. The Council created the Human Doctrine Academy, a school where all species could learn the principles that had made humanity special. Nari became its first director, dedicating herself to passing on what Taman had taught her. Months later, Taman stood at a viewport overlooking Sanctum Station. Ships from 100 worlds moved in peaceful patterns. Even some Vorn vessels were among them. The first steps toward integration. Nari joined him, as she often did. Do you still feel alone? She asked. Taman thought about it. He thought about his crew, lost 1,000 years ago. His species, trapped in another dimension. He was the last human in this reality. But he looked at Nari, at the station full of beings who had kept humanity's memory alive, at the students studying human philosophy, at the galaxy his people had died to save. No, he said finally. I am not alone. I have all of you. And, in a way, that means humanity never really left. We are still here, in everything we taught you, in every choice you make to be better. Then we will make sure they are proud, Nari said. Taman smiled. Somewhere, in a space between dimensions, he hoped his people were watching. He hoped they knew their sacrifice had not been in vain. The last human had kept the promise. The galaxy they saved would remember them. And in that remembrance, humanity would live forever.